right, be forewarned, this one's gonna get a little out there as it's going to deal with consciousness and potentially how we do not even really know that much about our own brains and how they function. How do we really know about the species of Earth? The reality is we find new subspecies all the time and even just species on their own. Also, I'm on like day one of a fast, so there's bound to be mess ups here. Anyways, we've always found stuff that we assumed shouldn't have existed in the first place. The Kraken was actually a sea monster that only veteran captains claimed was even out there. Eventually, with damage to their ships being present, still, nobody would believe that they existed until we captured images of the colossal squid and realized, no, yeah, the Kraken is out there. Still not as horrific and warranting the designation as needs to be eradicated immediately, quite like an anglerfish does, but that's a different topic for another day. It happens quite frequently that humanity will run across a creature we assume to be fake or even mythical. In the events of Death of a Unicorn, just that is happening. As a father and daughter, fresh off the mom flatlining, head up to a mansion where he's going to be promoted to millionaire, which the daughter hates for some reason, actually becomes sort of annoying. They end up running across one of these bloodthirsty and carnivorous creatures. The problem is, much like tales of old, it is not all unicorn farts and rainbows. These things are a real problem. So in today's episode, let's discuss what they are, where they may have come from, as well as any supporting evidence as we take a look at their physiology and the unicorn lore. And where's this channel going? But first, this episode is sponsored by a company you know and love, Factor. We all have nutrition goals, and let me tell you, ever since Oblivion Remastered has come out, the activity is down and the desire to eat like crap is high because I have been doing nothing but playing it. Factor helps me stay on track by providing fresh, never frozen meals delivered directly to my doorstep. With over 35 options, including Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, which is what I use, and Vegan and Veggie, there is something for everyone. And if you head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50 Roanoke, you can get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. Because Factor is delivered, this also means I can cut down on things like grocery store trips, meaning more time to get totally taken out by a Daedra swinging a paralyzing claymore several times at my body as I just lay there. And when it comes time to take a break from that, I can go to the fridge, pop in my Factor meal for 2 minutes, and have a delicious healthy meal ready to go so I don't just sit there and snack. So if you're ready to give your body great nutrition and meet your health goals, then head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50 Roanoke to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. All right, let's get back to it. We kick off our story at an airport. The pilot says, "Sorry for the tarmac delay." Truly, the horror starts early, which we all know if you've ever been flying is a reality. Jenna Ortega, or basically, as she will be known now, Wednesday, naps on Ant-Man's shoulder while he drops his papers. He is stuck though, sort of like when a cat sleeps on your lap. You are forbidden to move. However, making the complete wrong move, he elects to just quickly move out of the way and then let her head slam into the armrest instead. Great thinking, Dad. A voice then comes over the intercom saying that the stairs do not actually match up to the plane, as they are told they will be stuck just a little longer. Also, are those fake zits? Loading up, Brides of Christ, they head out into the mountains and driving through an area that I'm 100% sure I've been to. Like, I'm sure I've seen this. It's a lake with a road running alongside it in the middle of nowhere in northern Washington. Ant-Man then loses his signal, which is fairly accurate. Which, after looking up this area, I lied. This is filmed in Hungary, but I swear there is a lake in northern Washington that looks exactly like this area. Also, just to point out, Ant-Man and Wednesday is a fairly bold crossover. He thanks her for coming, as then she starts picking at her zits. Skincare is clearly her passion. Peeling off her face because of acne is iconic. Ant-Man then waxes poetic about untouched wilderness while jamming his snot tissue into a cup holder, which is pretty tasty. Also, you know Papa Roanoke has got you, and here's a bonus tip. If your cheeks ever break out like this, wash your pillowcase because you're gross and you need to do it more regularly, or just put a shirt over it every night like a totally normal and well-adjusted person. Essentially, you're getting too many oils on your face and bacteria is building up. Further out in a cave, something growls as then we hear neighing also. Wednesday, clearly not thrilled to be here, has to be absolutely tripping right now. Like, are you seeing the place around you? I mean, probably because her mom just flatlined, so I guess it's kind of understandable angst, as then they drive through what I can only call future disappearance territory of yours truly. It is stunning. Ant-Man gets a call about being late, then floors it and absolutely nukes a unicorn in the process. No way that front end survives. Also, you see how it's steaming? That indicates the radiator is busted. You are stuck at that point. Taking a moment to collect themselves, they look back up and it is a unicorn. Walking over with a tire iron, they approach it as then it whines, which, fun fact, there is a unicorn southwest of the Imperial City in Oblivion Remastered. I remember I let my buddy play the original Oblivion and he ended up killing it immediately, but for some reason, if you attack the minotaurs near it, it becomes hostile. No idea why. This one also could be hostile. Predator teeth, glowing horns, and purple blood. Very interesting, which let's discuss, given that we can already see it. Finally, some early science. All right, so first things first, let it be known right now, you just lost the game. Second, as we look at the body of this creature, really, there would be no difference for the most part between it and a standard foal. However, with that said, this creature is much more muscular than a standard foal of this age. I would almost have to assume it's almost in terms of like the subspecies of horses. I mean, I guess it's like the same species, but it's more like a Clydesdale horse than any other variant of horse that I know of. As we get a good look at it, its eyes are not like standard horses either, much larger and actually containing slits for pupils, very reminiscent of what you would see on a cat. It's a bit strange to see these eyes in this configuration, but having these characteristics, let me explain. See, the reason horses, which appear to be the closest example to something comparable to a unicorn, have eyes on like the sides of their head is because they are in fact prey animals. Mountain lions, also known as the non-fun cougars, hunt horses along with just packs of wolves. Ancient man also used to hunt them before we realized that they could actually be quite useful. Over time, through their own evolutionary pathways, this led to the successful members of their species breeding, which those had eyes moved towards the sides of their head. This actually gives a horse around 350 degrees of visual acuity, basically everything that's around them except for behind their like bodies specifically. However, it's clear this species does not evolve from horses given their own predatory nature. Now, it's hard to tell, but from what I can see with the adults later, while the eyes are somewhat on the side of their head, given their ear placement and brow ridge, their eyes may actually be more forward-facing, like many other types of animals that will hunt for food, humans included. But we will talk more about the adults when we see them. Moving to the blood for a moment, why is it purple, you may be asking? Well, if you aren't, we're going to talk about it anyhow, because blood coloring is fairly interesting. Don't be a huge dork. There are many ways in order to transport oxygen, and given that this animal is quite literally breathing the air that we are breathing, it must be able to utilize that oxygen of our atmosphere in order to undergo metabolic processes. This would suggest that this species does not have hemoglobin like pretty much all mammals do, and instead, it actually has hemerythrin. This protein binds oxygen to move it around the body and actually turns a vibrant purple when it is oxygenated. When the deoxygenated version of it is then pumped back towards the heart and lungs to be reoxygenated, it turns a pale hue, or possibly it could be even colorless. Strangely enough, typically this type of blood is found in worms and not complex animals such as large horses. It may also be, given what we'll see later, there is a slight blue coloring as well when the unicorn blood is kind of let out of its body, indicating potentially the presence of two oxygen-carrying proteins such as hemocyanin. And both of these would reside within the circulatory system. And this is found in arthropods and mollusks, which gives them their blue kind of hueish of coloring of their blood. Reaching out for the horn, Wednesday then touches it as she gets memory blasted into a nebula before Ant-Man absolutely smashes its head in. With that, we get the title card with purple brains on deck. But what is going on with the horn? Well, we definitely need to kind of see some more examples of what is happening here before it all becomes clear. Getting to the mansion, they finally roll up in the Volvo, which should legally be in a scrapyard by now because there's no way that thing is moving. Like after the radiator bursts on a modern car, it's not making it up any mountain roads with anything short of it totally heat locking that engine block. And before we start, yes, I see the Euro trash in the garages, but I refuse to simp for a car that dissolves after 80k miles. Porsche or Porsches, I know it's Porsche. Like, I feel pretty mid about them. Now give me some American muscle or Toyota supremacy and I'm all there. I see in life that there are actually two types of people. People who like reliability and power, and then people who like European vehicles. I know. The BMW 3 Series is considered to be highly reliable, but let me put it this way. When I look at European vehicles, nothing in my brain fires feel-good chemicals to tell me that that's worth investing in or even is a good-looking vehicle. I don't make the rules here. I just kind of work. Anyway, so the corpse is still in the back of the Volvo. Why not toss it off the road and just move along? Who knows? It's not like you go to jail for hitting a horse in the road that just wandered there, but you may go to jail for stabbing someone with a unicorn horn. Just saying. Inside the lodge, we meet Eyebrows Guy, as it's all Italian kissing on the side of your face and hugging, rich people things. Wasp Wife then goes into a vague description of her humanitarian efforts. She's either vaccinating or vacating refugees. She's not really sure. Then enter Odell, who asks if they saw any big game out on the roads on their way up. Wednesday, having seen some big game, says they can't stay all weekend. And this is an Ant-Man event. She needs to just chill out. This whole thing is to help them become established and then become millionaires. She then goes and looks out the window at the Volvo, it's not combusting into flames, as then security goes behind her to check that, make sure what she was looking at isn't gonna be a problem, and then they decide, nothing's there, which is pretty classic. In the bathroom, she washes unicorn blood off as then she hits the vape, and she acts like she just saw a unicorn or something, as Odell chats with Ant-Man about mortality and promotions, while Ant-Man's eyes immediately heal themselves, as he can see without his glasses. And also Wednesday's zits, totally cured. Everyone's healing, as it seems. So what is going on here? First, we need to establish the actual issue. Aging is such a cheap shot for our biology. With every mitotic division of our cells, a little bit of junk DNA, as it's referred to, which is actually not junk DNA, it houses viable genes, kind of gets cut off. As this happens, our cells will start to age and become less capable of doing their actual jobs. Eventually, their ability to divide reaches their end, which is somewhere between 40 to 60 divisions, which, as it's known, is called the Hayflick limit. Aging is always said to actually start taking place at around your mid-20s to early 30s, but the reality is, aging takes place as you form, as cellular damage can begin accumulating before you're even born. As we age, the lenses of our eyes specifically will become less flexible, and this happens because new layers on the lens cause it to increase in size slightly, making it less capable of flexing. Along with this, proteins within the lens itself will begin to change, specifically a chaperone protein known as an alpha crystalline, and this degrades with age, causing protein clumping, making them also less flexible. As this process continues, your vision will become more and more blurry. With this spontaneously fixing itself Spider-Man style, this indicates a few things. First, declumping of proteins within the eye would be necessary, and this would mean that the alpha crystalline would have to be functionally bussed back down to a younger form of itself. As we age, these specific functions go through several processes that lead it to no longer function as well. Oxidation is the big one, but also deamidation and glycation. Deamidation is when the amide group is removed or undergoes a specific change, and this prevents the protein from functioning correctly, as typically this group will now form aspartic acid. This process just happens by itself, and when it does, this destabilizes the protein and leads it to degrade. The fact that it just happens for no reason around the 4th decade of your life is like, yo, it's been real, but I'm out, is just absolutely ridiculous. Aging is so lame. Thanks, body, for your just stellar work there. Glycation, on the other hand, is when sugar molecules like glucose will actually end up binding to protein, inhibiting its ability to properly function. But why would sugar be building up in the body? Well, once again, as we age, our meat suits become less adept at dealing with blood sugar due to insulin resistance. We also decrease the amount of insulin in general, so as time passes, the sugar can have a propensity to build up within our bodies. As a result of this, more glucose in the eyes, which actually leads to glycation. You see, it's all interconnected, and typically with symptoms in one part of the body, it would be caused by the failings in another part, which is just joy abound. Listen, man, it beats the hell out of being 6 feet under, but at the same time, it is so lame how we age. So for his eyes to be spontaneously healed, this would mean that the proteins would have to have the damages of deamidation and oxidation fixed, but along with this, glucose levels would need to fall. So how? Well, it's clear given that we also see Wednesday's zits healing, which that's an integral part of the genome having to be possibly repaired, or something just downstream of it operating differently. But strangely, it's not fully shown if this is like supernatural or very much so like a corporeal fix, I guess is the best way to put it. However, we will see later what it is capable of and discuss the healing factor a little more in depth. But back in the car, the unicorn horn then lights up once again. Wednesday crashes out as the unicorn reboots. Downstairs, she tells Ant-Man that they need to deal with the unicorn body and that they need to leave, as she doesn't feel it's right to be there. Prometheus, I gotta tell you, chill out, not now. This gal's has the worst timing when it comes to wanting to do things. But then they hear something. The Volvo begins moving. Ant-Man says Wednesday is sick and that they need to leave, and she's not really helping her case with any of this, by the way. Security is then alerted to the fact that the Volvo is shaking, as Eyebrows asks if they actually hit anything on the way up. Yes, a unicorn. Heading outside, it breaks out of the vehicle as security then immediately domes it before it is able to escape. They then haul it out as no one wants to admit that it's an actual unicorn. Wednesday does, however, as in security number 2 backs her up. Odell asks what happened out there, as she says the blood hit her in the face and then healed her. Ant-Man got some in his eyes, same result. Odell decides maybe this needs to go to the government, but rich people logic says let's monetize it. He then calls up his personal doctor and his mobile lab. Night falls as Wednesday keeps vaping, again horrible for your growing lungs, as Ant-Man then checks on her since she's been isolating for the remainder of the evening. He says he saved the day because she looked like she was actually having a seizure during the event. She says it showed her something, and he tells her to just stop making the weekend about her, which I mean, I've never been a teen girl or a dad to a teen girl, but Wednesday, I think you need to pack it in, gal. You are talking about a weekend of dealing with these people, and if it lands correctly, your dad's entire future, as well as yours, is secured. So looking through photos, she then spots a unicorn in the background. She starts digging through unicorn lore, while Ant-Man then checks on the corpse, which is now gone. Eyebrows then compliments Ant-Man's handling of the situation, then yells for Griff to get him a bathing suit, but then cancels the bathing suit, then asks them to join the hot tub again. You see, asking once is like normal. Asking someone to join a hot tub twice when they haven't gotten in yet, it's a little sus. So as they sit there, they hear growling followed by elk shrieking. As then they look out over the mountains, Aurora Borealis at this time of year in this part of the country. So anyways, unicorn lore time. A pure-hearted maiden can subdue a unicorn, but they are also considered to be feral beasts with stabbing capabilities and a propensity to eat human flesh. So something we need to establish before moving on any further is that this is somewhat supernatural depending on who you ask and what our understanding of the universe actually is. The reality is if you grab someone from medieval times, and not the restaurant, but because, I mean, let's be real, they're gonna be less impressed. I'm talking somebody from like the 1300s and showed them how a TV functions along with a remote control, they would just assume you'd be a witch and supernatural. But the reality is it just uses electricity and radio signals to operate. As we look out into the sky, it's clear this aurora is being caused by the unicorns, and given what Wednesday saw earlier, the unicorn species appears to have a connection beyond human understanding with space, but along with that, the very fabric of reality. As we will see here momentarily, an area of effect appears to be created when they are in a certain area, which also how they know where everyone is, and potentially this is a hunting technique that they seem to emit some form of radiation given their actions that they are taking. In this case, they are searching for specifically their offspring, and as such, these charged particles, or at least this energy, is also striking the upper atmosphere, creating this aurora. And these are emitted in all directions, but what is it? It seems to me, given the aurora, meaning Earth's magnetic field, is being interacted with, that this has an EMP effect on also human electronics. This would indicate that this is a type of non-lethal radiation. This radiation interacts with electronics in a detrimental way, such as causing electricity to kind of flow through unintended paths, leading to malfunctions in those electronics. It can also cause the device to raise the threshold for its operation and create parasitic effects within a circuit, which then drains the battery. Because this is all taking place under very specific circumstances, this would seem to indicate some. But I can hear you now. Roanoke, why would it be utilizing this type of radiation at all to hunt? Well, the reality is we know right now that radiation can be used to show movements in an area, such as with fluoroscopy utilizing X-rays to show real-time movement. The other radiation methods, such as radiotomographic imaging, can also allow for objects moving to be seen behind walls, which will be important for pretty much everything. I believe, though, this species is somewhat beyond our understanding, and it would have a actual, it's emitting specific types, and this allows it to hunt. But how can they be the only ones to read it, but interact with the human brain in the way that they do? Well, all will become clear here shortly. So that night, Wednesday is just sort of vibing through unicorn visions as it trots through the woods, and then she wakes up. Guys in suits are hauling her off to the lab, and inside, the unicorn's been domed. They run genetic tests and declare that it is not a horse per se. It is, in fact, a unicorn. Wednesday then tells Ant-Man that they need to be careful with how they proceed, as she feels something bad is going to happen. According to her research, the blood's got therapeutic properties only if the horn's intact. Turns out the horn is actually a living organ, basically a neural pylon that is still firing. Don't worry, we'll get there and also talk about it. There's a lot we have to set up. So they file the horn and then drop it into saline, which then they pump into Odell for reasons. Hopefully they sterilize it though, although I do suppose they did put it in boiling water prior to this. Continue on. No clue why this upsets Wednesday though, as that thing is already gone, but here we are. Scanning for radiation, they find the horn is actually putting off an electromagnetic wave. Cutting open the unicorn reveals that it has blue blood. Meanwhile, Wednesday wanders into the forest, ripped directly from Twilight, which don't ask me how I know that, as then she finds hoof marks and then hears screaming. Yes, time to go. She sprints back as distant neighing follows, as finally we can discuss. So as indicated earlier, this entire thing is connected in several ways to the operation of a unicorn. The horn itself is putting out electromagnetic waves, which is intrinsic to how this creature hunts in the first place as well. As we will see, when Wednesday grabbed the horn earlier, she was transported to another point in space visually, but how? Well, electromagnetism is well understood, but its applications concerning our own brains is not fully fleshed out as of yet concerning our tech level. Our brains emit electromagnetism constantly through the functioning of our own neurons, and due to this, if you have a sensitive enough sensor, you can actually pick up the very minute fluctuations in emissions, and with that, you could actually decipher it to potentially figure out what someone is thinking based on how they're oscillating. Be aware, we can measure brain activity in this capacity, but at this current point in time, time, we do not necessarily know what someone is thinking due to the firing of those nerves. However, interestingly, and bear with me as this concept is gonna get a little out there, as it always does, but that's kind of what this channel is for, our brains may know what someone else is thinking, at least to a degree. Well, some of us might. This idea is predicated on potentially a form of mind reading in humanity that may be cropping up. So remember the test in Ghostbusters or Venkman or Dr. Venkman, I think it was Dr. Venkman, would look at a card and then the other person had to guess it. Of course, he was shocking the guy who actually knew it, and he was just hitting on the chick who didn't know it. This is actually a real test. It was developed to see if humanity had the ability to read another person's mind, which sounds pretty out there, but when you consider astral projection through declassified CIA documents confirming that people were actually able to see into a Soviet base and correctly map its layout, like this was confirmed, they were correct after the collapse of the Soviet Union, which is absolutely wild. It kind of opens up your mind to the possibility that there is something deeper going on with our species besides what we just see. Anyhow, mirror neurons in the brain are known to fire in a monkey see, monkey do sort of scenario. Within the premotor cortex, supplementary motor area, primary somatosensory cortex, and inferior parietal cortex, these areas are known to house mirror neurons. And obviously, you might be wondering why it's in the somatosensory cortex as well as the motor area. Basically, so you can move your body after you see something, you can mimic it. But with these tests conducted, this telepathy phenomenon appears to light up the mirror neurons, indicating that something strange is going on within their functioning. Now, is it really mind reading or just plain luck? Really, it's hard to say, as the brain itself has functions to support this thinking, but there's also many examples that sort of disprove it. But the reality of all this is that the brain's mirror neurons produce a very small amount of electromagnetism, and that may be what all of this is based on. It is well known that electromagnetism can influence a neuron to depolarize it to continue on information. And depending on location, this can induce visual hallucinations. We have seen it with transcranial magnetic stimulation. Rapidly changing magnetic fields can actually cause visual perception of light to spontaneously appear. Literally, your brain shows you lights in response to electromagnetism. See, this is what always brings up, it's interesting as a thought experiment to me. Like, are we conduits for consciousness or are we the consciousness? Most people actually feel separated from their brains. You know, you inhabit a body, clearly, but are we really the sum of our parts? I believe it's Descartes. That's his argument. Are we the sum of our parts? May have misremembered. I'm just getting that off the top of my head, but the fact that we know that we are brains is strange enough, because even knowing that, the brain will still make itself feel separate. Then, considering we can force fire neurons to make us see things, yet still appear to have an identity outside of these brains, makes it even more bizarre. Do we control our brains? Or are we working with our brains? A lot of people think that they control their brains because, you know, they are their brains, but you can kind of test this out for yourself. Pause this video for like 5 minutes and try to think of absolutely nothing. It is highly unlikely that you can. Pretty much everyone will find that they cannot think of nothing for an extended period of time. There will be someone in the comments who's like, oh, I can do it. It's super easy. I'm calling you a liar right now. I'm calling you out. I'm taking you to task on that, because it's very unlikely that you can do that for 5 minutes, not think of anything. You have to be like a Buddhist monk who's been in training for several years. And even then, that is basically you learning to control your brain. Why can we not control our brain right out of the gate if we are our brain? Very strange. But let's say that you can do it. Then you're like 0.001% of humanity that might be able to. But the fact that we cannot even control our thinking, which is us, sort of makes it a bit bizarre to assume that we are in control of our brains, at least entirely. And if we aren't, why aren't we? We are it and it is us. Why even give that explanation to begin with in the first place as to why this exists? The human brain is sort of psychotic if you really just sit down and think about this thing. Like, where do our thoughts even begin to form if we don't even know what we were going to be thinking about? How am I actually discussing this right now? Where did the idea come from for me to even write this, to then read this in the first place? How did I know I was going to even talk about this? If it does not turn out that consciousness on this level is not shared by all animals and humans are really potentially just a conduit, then this would seem to imply that we are focal points in space for something much larger to inhabit, and we simply, I guess, pick up pieces of that consciousness. And if this is the case, then this is how unicorns communicate. By using the conduits in our skulls, they can cause the neurons to force fire directly interacting with human consciousness, although it's just going to be pieces. But this species, hilariously, despite not looking it, would be far beyond our own understanding of anything around us. Convoluted thought experiment, but I think you probably, for the most part, get what I'm saying. Of course, how exactly is this accomplished? Well, we must first talk about the healing factor before going on to anything else. So back at Odell's room, he claims it's beginning to work. He wishes he'd gone to space, though. I mean, don't we all? As then he says, whatever happens, Ant-Man will get his royalties. Also, they're back, they say they're on Blackfoot land, which they're in Hungary, which means something, I guess, as then the Wasp wife tells him to be quiet as then he passes out. I eyebrows then checks on Wednesday as she wonders if unicorns existed in history and maybe we just botched it. Griff then sets up a printer as she says they'll present the findings to his parents. Then they see Odell walking down the hallway. He has been completely healed. They run his blood, the cancer, spontaneous remission. Everyone cheers cure for cancer as then he hugs his wasp wife, who probably doesn't feel very great about it, as then he continues on by saying he can feel his cells buzzing. Well, there's probably a reason for that. So they talk about replicating the unicorn protein, but surprise, the lead researcher says it's non-replicable. Wow, that was hard to say. So there's only one supply of it. So plan B is to just sell it to rich people. So how exactly is this happening? Well, from what I can gather with the unicorn protein, its very existence serves as a molecular chaperone. What is that? Well, this is functionally a protein whose job it is to help other proteins achieve the correct folds. As we all know, proteins are essential for protein repair as it provides the building blocks of all cells. These amino acids rebuild and repair damaged tissues like muscle, skin, connective tissues, lenses of your eyes, zits, which are all broken areas that need to be repaired. So everything that is you needs to be repaired by protein. But what it appears to me is, given the spontaneous cancer remission, it's important that you understand that cancers often have increased levels of misfolded protein compared to normal cells. These actually contribute to the development and progression of most cancers. Clearing misfolded proteins actually does appear to potentially prevent cancer from progressing and may actually stop it entirely. And this needs way more research, as you were talking about. Like, I found some information on this dated back to 2015 and then like a new resurgence in 2024. I'm sure it's been worked on the whole time, but we need more research. But with the fixes in place, this can actually reverse cancerous cells as well as damage to the eyes and zits. And it's pretty clear the proteins of the human body are being affected on a massive scale, which is going through and then repairing the body once they're exposed to the unicorn blood and brains and everything else. So as a molecular chaperone, how does another species protein help refold human proteins? Well, it seems that genetically it would really not affect the cells so much, but we may be able to look to prions to kind of understand this process. If you take chronic wasting disease, or CWD, this kind of works as like opposite to unicorns because it works in horrific ways by causing a misfolding of proteins in the brain. And this induces problems that 100% leads to death of the deer. And it appears as though it's finally made the leap to humans. We aren't 100% sure, but I think I saw something the other day about it leaping to somebody in Alabama. Not ideal, but if this does ever jump to humans, it's going to be a problem. But we also have one called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and there are two possibilities here. And these are human prions, but either the proteins that naturally exist, known as prions, because you do have prions already in your brain, they're just folded correctly, they may run into the misfolded prions, which then causes them to change, or the misfolded prions run into enzymes that are responsible for folding prions correctly. It breaks them, and this causes them to misform other prions. Either way, once this process starts, it doesn't stop, and it will result in death, and we have zero way to slow it down as of yet. But what may be happening is the polar opposite with unicorns. The unicorn chaperone proteins, for one reason or another, may be more capable of changing orientation, potentially by coming into contact with healthy human proteins that are just aged. Upon doing so, they run into enzymes, potentially refold them correctly, meaning that the body's healing capacity is reset, but they also refold the misfolded proteins of the body, which naturally existed due to aging and time, or like damage has been incurred by the sun. And this has an almost immediate healing effect, but also resets the clock on the healing enzymes responsible for folding these proteins. Now, this doesn't make you genetically immortal, as other issues could still arise, once this process is complete, but because it is such a foundational point, it resets damage to the cells back to a younger level. The genes, however, would still have their changes induced from damage over time, which still will result in death because they are still damaged to some degree. But now the question is, how would a protein know to do this? Well, this is about to definitely get out there, and I hope I explained this correctly because this just kind of came to me, but much like our consciousness conversation, this would be predicated on information outside of the established known rules of the universe. So remember, 1% in life is what you know, 2% is what you know that you don't know, and 97% is what you don't know that you don't even know. So with this in mind, given our bodies have an operational point that has led us to being alive in the first place, this would indicate that there is a baseline for life to exist. This baseline requires specific proteins to be the standard. While serving different jobs, much like how we can create certain enzymes to fix misfolded proteins, the process may happen naturally through an actual fix created by thought. Again, yes, getting out there. But you know, as much as people say I yap on this channel, thought experiments are always fun when they get into like cosmic situations like this. Anyhow, given that unicorns are beyond human understanding, much like how the universe exists and can influence the very fabric of the universe around it, having an adaptive protein to any animal it comes across is not too far-fetched. Along with this thought process, their own proteins may be adapted to the needs of their own body in general to keep them immortal. And when humans are exposed to these adaptive proteins, our own bodies are healed, which is what is seen. It just becomes a question of if this is done through conscious thought or if this is just an adaptive mechanism. And given what we see, I'm going to be bold and say, I think given the background consciousness in this movie and what it's hinting at, that means everything is interconnected, and as a result, the proteins are controlled through conscious thought to alter structure based on what they inhabit and that own creature's conscious thought. But anyhow, that's way out there. We're gonna get back to the movie. So Wednesday's still printing unicorn slides, trying to talk to literally anyone, but everyone is on the phone selling unicorn horns. Drinking unicorn blood later, she then tells them that they can't harvest it. Unicorns were once divine monsters, as Ant-Man just has a memory blank out about not seeing the unicorn tapestries behind her mother, which she's angry about. Like, dude, if I'm looking at somebody, I'm not looking what's in the background. So apparently they represented Christ and man's corruption. So yeah, the tapestries are right all along. We do be corrupt sometimes. Also, fun fact, when you are grieving due to a loss, your brain quite literally is breaking neural connections to protect you. So if you've ever lost a loved one, your memory might be total crap for like a year or two until that process subsides. You're not going crazy or you have some mental disease. It's just very real and very annoying. So it's very clear Ant-Man may be experiencing that. So they vacuum seal the unicorn and then prep it for shipping. Security goes and gets static from the radios that they have as Griff then opens the front gate. Lights flicker, electronic die, and see, EMP blast. So Ant-Man then checks the lab as Wednesday exits out of the Volvo. Now there's thunder, shrieking, and another aurora as the unicorn then goes full on predator. Ant-Man arrives just in time to see the head scientist get absolutely impaled and then turned into spine spaghetti. Really don't know how he was standing as long as he was, because a spinal impalement like that would have meant it's most definitely severed, meaning his legs should not have worked at all. Security then opens fire on it as Ant-Man watches through the plastic. He tells Wednesday to get in the car as she hears something. Suddenly it rushes her as then she hits the horn. Baring its teeth, it looks totally Predator. It then completely smashes a guard's head, like good lord, man. See, these things are smarter than just regular horses, and then it circles the car. Ant-Man and Wednesday then dodge it as it chases her, and Ant-Man stops as it confronts her because she's the pure-hearted maiden as it jams its horn through a fence as then she reaches out. But that's before security then lights it up. The rich trio arrives fashionably late as the unicorn's bleeding and winged. They gaze into the woods to see absolutely nothing as it has noped out of there. Covering the bodies, they then sit down for dinner. Casual. Ant-Man and Wednesday then argue once more to kind of change up the pace as she says the vision connected her to both unicorns. The little one wants to be left alone. Odell wants to feel something too. Also, they notice the horn was girthsome. Ant-Man, now chewing unicorn meat, is about to be demoted for wanting to leave. Instead, he agrees to just go unicorn hunting. Researcher briefs security on the electromagnetic readings as Odell gets suited up like he's cosplaying for a safari. He says he's killed lions, elephants, and great apes, which, by the way, gorilla versus 100 men, humans don't lose. Like, don't at me on that. Someone put together a video saying, well, most people aren't trained to fight. Correct. But if we were talking like a life and death situation here, 2 or 3 humans per gorilla arm or gorilla leg, that's all it's gonna take. A gorilla can bench press at around about 1,100 pounds allegedly, so 3 180-pound humans per arm puts that outside of the range of where it could move. Like, I get it. I wouldn't want to be the first one to grab onto that thing, but no shot, like even 10 people for like per limb couldn't hold that thing down as someone then just starts going just absolutely goblin mode on its head. Again, don't at me, gorilla takes the L. So Wednesday then begs her dad not to go. Meanwhile, researcher cries near the fire as Eyebrows confronts her by offering unicorn powder because nothing says healing like illicit magical protein dust. She then gets hyped through his inspirational speech and then returns to the lab. Out in the woods, Ant-Man keeps running into people while tracking unicorn blood. Eyebrows, he's licking the powder back at the house, and Wednesday, apparently she's done with the whole situation and just is sort of leaving. Just gonna leave your old man behind like that? Coward. Eyebrows then snorts some unicorn powder straight to the dome as then his eyes go full nebula mode as Wednesday gets to the Volvo, which again would obviously be dead, and then finds Ant-Man's gross tissues in that area. Deciding she can't leave her dad behind, the aurora glows above and something's getting closer in woods. Yes, the unicorns are hunting. Back inside, she checks the ancient scrolls. Apparently unicorns resurrect after being taken down, and she texts Ant-Man to tell him to get out of the woods, but his phone doesn't work. You know, the electromagnetic field and all that. Researcher then rambles about mitochondria and cellular swelling, meaning that the unicorn isn't dead yet, and it appears to be repairing itself. See, when cell death happens, this can actually trigger an accumulation of misfolded proteins within the cytoplasm and exterior to the cell as well. So it appears as though the cells can actually die, but the proteins within its body will still go around fixing them, causing the body to heal regardless. This, to me, is the greatest example of this being an outside influence on the body itself, because the body dies, but the outside fix pushes it to be repaired once more, even post-mortem. Wednesday then finds Griff and says unicorns can heal themselves, and meanwhile, researcher is sawing the horn off. Ant-Man gets a text finally, but it's too late as Odell reaches for the unicorn, which is a horrible idea, as the horn is then cut off permanently. Well, like temporarily. This ends up severing the psychic link with Wednesday. The adult unicorn then goes feral, dragging security away in its attack. There are also two of these things now, which makes sense given, they had an offspring, as it starts circling like a predator once more. Odell then lights up the Forrest Dutch style while security gets dropped and the rich folks flee, predictably, as Ant-Man bolts it back to the house. At the gate, Odell tries to stop it as he's cornered by both of them. Reaching out for the horn and talking to it, he's not really a pure-hearted maiden, so his frontal lobe gets a nice lobotomy as then he drops immediately. And given the proteins are not native to his body and the assumed outside influence is really not present, he meets his end as any normal human does. Realizing their only plan now is to return the slab, they wheel out the younger unicorn as Wasp Wife then asks if these things have ever been caught in the past. It now goes full-on horror movie as the unicorns knock out power. There's another statement I thought I'd never make. Manual opening the gate is now required as Griff is voluntold to go open it. Researcher has to get the unicorn body near the tree line while the Aurora continues to go purple. The group then splits up as Griff hits the gate and Researcher hears growling after returning the body as Eyebrows then smokes some more horn dust. While doing that though, he's also staring at unicorn pics. Griff unlocks the gate as Researcher is approached and she tries to wake up the unicorn, or at least the unicorns do, but no dice. She drops a vial of the unicorn's horn dust as then apparently both unicorns vanish. She calls out to the others saying that the coast is clear, which I'm not sure why she would say that at all, as in that moment they reappear and then tear her in half. Griff then nopes out of there after witnessing that, which is the correct choice, as Wednesday says this is what they wanted, only a pure-hearted maiden can trap them. She cries as yes, this is partially your fault for not mentioning that earlier, as unicorns then start breaking into the mansion at this point in time. Eyebrows sort of continues snorting more horn dust as then Ant-Man quits his job on the spot. Looking into the nebula once more, Eyebrows feels at Mr. Krabs as he falls back and comes back too. He now knows what he has to do. Wednesday and Ant-Man then go to run as Eyebrows grabs Wednesday, but the unicorns are outside the door. It starts trying to break through the door as everyone then runs back to the house, but they have pretty much succeeded in getting inside. So are you telling me this house doesn't have like a panic room? Getting in, they give chase as it becomes a nice game of keep away. Opening the door slowly to Wednesday's door, Ant-Man looks out and then sees a unicorn approaching as its mouth is right there, which would scare the holy hell out of you. The others are still, well, the other is still searching for Eyebrows and his mom. Continuing to hide, Eyebrows then crawls away as he throws a shoe at the piano to get its attention as then he runs for the container. Running to Odell's study, he realizes Griff did find his bow and now he feels bad. Wasp Wife then says they need to just blow it up. Eyebrows says the unicorn dust is in his brain and it's firing all cylinders. Wednesday says the unicorns are going to kill them, which yes, you are just putting that together now apparently, as it also turns out Ant-Man has the horn, which now he's like, it's sort of like the reveal in Jurassic Park 3 when it turns out that one guy had the raptor eggs. It's like, all right. So it turns into a statement of how he promised his wife that he would take care of her, and that's why he stole the horn. Yes, very good. So then they hug it out as the unicorns are going ham outside. Wasp Wife tries to have a moment with Eyebrows as he tells her just to shut up, and then taking his compound bow, and with her grabbing the oxygen, they go to listen to them in the kitchen as she says she thinks they might be leaving, as then she gets speared through the chest, which is pretty painful. She then gets grabbed and dragged off as she's tossed around like a baby in a dryer. Wednesday says when she touched the horn, she saw her mom, and the unicorn is now breaking into the room as Wasp Wife is getting pieced up while she gets the oxygen turned on. The unicorn then bites at her abdomen as Eyebrows goes and takes a shot, but instead runs away as his mom is disemboweled because he wants to create a farm with these things so he can't save her if he, doesn't blow up the unicorn, which also blows her up. Hey, he's a douche. So Ant-Man then starts running from the other one as now it is morning. Wednesday Wednesday then jumps from the balcony as Eyebrows holds her at bow point. Ant-Man is still trying to outrun this thing as the other unicorn approaches, showing it has a dew claw. Approaching Wednesday, man, in the light of day, this CGI is rough. Looking like Donkey from Shrek, we see its mouth pretty clearly. She has a nice cry as it lays across her because she's a pure-hearted maiden, allegedly. Eyebrows then goes to tie it up. Ant-Man then approaches with the horn as the other unicorn walks up to Wednesday, sniffing her as it also lies down. Eyebrows then proceeds to tie her up as well. So Ant-Man then straight up stabs Eyebrows as then Eyebrows stabs Ant-Man. Bro, that was actually just straight up murder as Eyebrows then goes to grab the bolt and the unicorn gets loose as it bucks and then hits him in the head, taking him out. Ant-Man then asks what the unicorn showed her as she tells him, "Oh, I saw Mom and everything was peaceful," as he's like, "Oh, I'm not doing so hot. I'll be there waiting for you," as he flatlines out. I mean, from a gut stab? Like I supposed if, like, you know, the abdominal aorta was nicked, but you should have way more time after just a bolt. Who knows? So she has a nice cry over this as the unicorn then comes over, dragging him away for a snack later. Just kidding. Putting the horn near the offspring and also Ant-Man, they gingerly touch tips above Ant-Man as a black hole forms, dooming Earth, which ends up healing the youngling unicorn, which then heals Ant-Man in the process, as this is an area of effect healing. Those are the best. Ant-Man then sees the beginning of Ant-Man 4 as he nopes out of the nebula as the unicorns then turn white for some reason as they have all been rendered knocked down. They nope out of there into the forest, and does this house work as sort of like a finders keepers sort of deal? Also, what's with the horn? The horn in my mind, as mentioned by the researcher earlier, clearly shows the neurological activity, and with that, this could be where the strong amount of electromagnetism is actually produced, and with Wednesday grabbing the horn, she'd be directly connected to the EM field, which then causes her own brain to fire in a similar pattern as what the unicorn wants, which allows for them to communicate either through their brains or possibly through the aforementioned higher plane of consciousness beyond human understanding. But even when cut off, the neurological activity within it still operates, allowing for someone who snorts the horn to also undergo a similar level of neurological firing due to the operation of those unicorn neurons. So Griff now arrives with the cops, having made his way back, and it doesn't look too good. Everyone is now arrested, with only Griff's testimony being able to keep them out of jail. The cop tells them they better have a good lawyer, but luckily her dad's a lawyer. As they start laughing, yeah, that doesn't guarantee they're going to be getting out of jail time. He then tells her he saw the nebula too. As the cop drives, she looks out and sees the unicorns are running on the hillside, confirming that they do exist. Well, that's advantageous that the cops saw that too, as then they put on their seatbelt as the unicorn goes to break them free. So you're telling me are you just on the run for the rest of your life? Like, just because the unicorn set you free doesn't mean you're free from the law. Well, I can definitely safely and definitively say this was truly one of the movies of this decade, and thus concludes Death of Unicorn. So first things first, to round this out, we need to discuss two things, and let's start with the physiology. Given that the species has the ability to actually interact with the very fabric of reality, and it has a dew claw, and it has predatory teeth, I don't think this is native to Earth. In an event known as convergent evolution, it's when two unrelated species can actually have very similar characteristics, but again, they're not related. To this end, this species is exactly that. In my mind, given their predatory nature and propensity to attack and likely benefit from a carnivorous diet, they evolved on another world entirely, potentially in this nebula that they are connected with. Next, because their physiology is not going to be really the most interesting aspect, which is very strange, it is the connection to possibly a higher plane of consciousness. As made known by Wednesday, she saw her mom where the unicorns were, and this would indicate that very likely the tapestries that relate the unicorns to Christ are connected to the afterlife in this plane of existence. To be so would indicate that after death is really not supernatural, but a very normal part of the universe. And I think it kind of goes back to the discussion of our brains being a conduit for consciousness instead of it being an end-all be-all. This species can tap into that consciousness on a more profound level, and as a result, those that pass on are still around as they were just a consciousness inhabiting our body. And because they cannot really be killed in the first place, only the body can, the bodies just are simply piloted, so to speak. As a result of this, the unicorn themselves are functionally immortal because you can kind of think of their healing factor not being rooted in their bodies, but being rooted in something more immaterial coming from another place in the universe entirely. But that's just what I think anyhow. But moving on, I want to thank you guys for watching. What did you guys think of the consciousness and what it represents? Let me know down in the comments. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Roanoke Games link, where I live stream in the description. But speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real first. Huge thank you to our astronaut. Bananas are epic. Thank you, my man. Next, I'd like to thank our astrophysicist, Desk Dancer. Thank you as well. And I'd like to thank our scientist, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System. Ocean Gate was a cover-up for an anglerfish attack, Official Texan, and Stutz. And the rest of my patrons, you guys are absolute ballers. I appreciate you too, because it goes a long way towards helping, so thank you. But all right, that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see y'all in the next one.